The content you're consuming might be ruining your life. In this video, I'm going to cover the 3 levels of impact that you need to be paying attention to and how they might show up in your life. I'll also share my strategy on how to use content consumption as a tool to reach my goals. In my mind, I separate content into 3 different buckets. There's content that uplifts you, inspires you, and pushes you to do better. There's content that does the opposite and is discouraging, distracting, and pulls you farther away from the person you want to be. And in the middle is neutral ground. But that doesn't mean that the neutral ground content has no impact. That type of content is still taking capacity and bogging down your mind with unnecessary information. So now that we understand those 3 buckets, we can get into the levels of impact so that you can understand how the types of content might be impacting you on a daily basis. The first type of impact is subconscious. Now, you are probably well aware of the control that your subconscious mind has over your mental health and your life as a whole. That's why things like self-talk are so important, because what you're telling yourself in your head every day, how you speak to yourself, ends up showing up in the external world around you. That's why there are people who never seem to have anything go wrong. It's because they never let the possibility of failure even enter the subconscious. Now, all of the things that you consume on a daily basis, that's scrolling on your phone, it's watching TV, it's reading, it's listening, all consumption enters your conscious and subconscious mind. So while you might be listening to a song and not really paying attention to those lyrics, that does not mean it's not sticking somewhere. So you need to be feeding your subconscious the right information to get you where you want to go. Now, what that means is going to be dependent on the person watching this video. Where you want to go might just be a more positive and happy life. You might have very big goals that you're trying to reach. It doesn't matter. You need to structure your consumption to support whatever it is you're working toward. And part of that is building your subconscious and feeding it only things that are supportive of those goals. The next level of impact is energy. Everything is energy and everything has energy. That means you, that means every piece of content that you consume. Now, for this impact, I'll share a bit of an anecdote. A few years ago, my girlfriend and I got very into watching Criminal Minds. I still love the show, but I don't watch it because whenever we were watching it day after day after day, we woke up one day and realized just how poor our mental health was. And we realized that it was because of the energy of the show. It is obviously not a positive show. A lot of the scenes can be graphic or scary, and those things were entering our brain. We were absorbing that energy, and it was impacting how we were showing up on a daily basis. So you need to assess the energy of each individual thing that you are consuming. Each creator, each video they put out, each song, show, movie, thing that you're reading, everything. What is the vibe of it? This can be especially important nowadays whenever you're scrolling on platforms like Twitter. I notice on my feed on there that there are a lot of doomers. There's a lot of negative talk, many people saying all hope is lost and things like that. Now, they are right to have their own opinion, but that energy will stick to me and it will carry with me for the rest of the day. And I know that because I've taken the time to assess whenever I'm struggling and I'm not really sure why, I will step back and understand, okay, what did I consume during the day that might be sticking with me still? And I found that a lot of times it's things like that. It is the outright negative or hateful things that people are putting online that are then carrying with me, even though I don't agree with them. But the best way to pay attention to this is just by doing a vibe check. Vibe check everything that you're consuming and see if it feels right to you and if it's really something that you want to stick with you. Now, the final impact level that we're going to talk about is alignment. And this goes back to the subconscious and it also applies to the energy. These all work together. So like I said, if there's something you are working toward, then you need to make sure what you're consuming is in alignment with it. And this is where you might need to go through and audit, the people that you're following and the things that you're consuming and look for new, look for inspiration, look for guidance and positive content that will support you toward that goal. A simple example here is say you want to be a triathlete. You're probably going to naturally start following triathletes on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever. But the important part is that you're very picky. Are you following triathletes that are inspiring and encouraging and provide valuable information to you? Or are you following people who maybe focus on the clickbait aspects that are the negative side of doing triathlons and things like that? Now, that information is important to you. What are the negatives? However, if you're consuming that on a daily or even weekly basis, just the negative perspective, it's going to be pretty discouraging to you, and it will make you less likely to reach that eventual goal. How I apply this in my life is by assessing my values and what it is that I'm working toward, and finding creators that not only are doing or working toward the same thing, but also align with my values. So if I'm following and engaging with people who own a business or are building public, I want to make sure that they are doing it in an ethical way, that they understand their why, and that they aren't, the type that is flaunting, the car that they bought and things like that. I have certain parameters that I look for to make sure that I am staying in alignment with my own goals through the content that I'm consuming. Now let's talk more about the strategy. My suggestion is that you work toward an 80-20 split for the content you consume. It is nearly impossible to get to a point where 100% of the things that you consume are perfectly in alignment, have the right energy, and aren't going to impact your subconscious, right? So instead, focus on 80% being aligned, 80% being correct. You can control that much. And then you'll have 20% that slips through, right? Whether that's literally through things that slip through the algorithm or things that you need to see even if you don't necessarily want to. So a next step for you might be going through and auditing who you're following on each platform. I did this at the start of the year, and I found that there were a lot of accounts that I was giving capacity to by keeping up with them and absorbing the information that they were providing, but it wasn't adding anything to my life. It wasn't contributing to me and what I'm doing in any way. And by doing this, you start to gain control over the content you're consuming. And that is a very critical part of this, is that you feel in control. So it's also monitoring the time spent on each individual platform, or even watching shows, consuming music, and things like that. Because a habit of constant consumption is not good for your brain either. This is not an encouragement to consume more, even if it's all the right stuff. It is vital as a builder or creator or aspirational person that you have time in silence. You have time to create and consume your own thoughts and ideas and perspectives. Because sometimes the constant consumption, even if it is the right content, can start to feel like you're pouring like honey in the cogs of a wheel. You start to feel less motivated, less creative, feel like maybe your critical thinking isn't as sharp. But if you take anything away from this video, I want it to be the understanding that everything you are consuming has an impact. And it's important that you are aware of that impact and can start to take some control back for yourself.